What's up, everybody? Dan here with Dan at Sarah Makers, and I'm coming at you with another Tool Tuesday. I haven't made any of these in quite a while, and that doesn't mean that I haven't gotten any new tools. I haven't done anything with them. It means that I have gotten new tools, and I haven't had enough time with the new tools to feel like I can actually do a review for you guys. So the first one I've decided to do is this DeWalt 9-inch 60 volt max Flex Volt Cuttoff saw. What this is it's, I believe it was the first cordless cutoff saw that's come out. Obviously, DeWalt, Milwaukee, they're kind of head and head, leading the pack in new tool innovation, whether it's skill saw style framing saws, nail guns, cutoff saws. Whenever one of them comes out, you know the next one's coming out with the same thing basically very soon after. But this is a DeWalt. It is nice. It's not gas, where typically you'd have a Steel, Husqvarna, Wacker Neuson, Bomag, you know, the different companies that have made them that are typically out there. So you don't have the issues with gas power, with carburetors, with air filters, all the little odds and ends that go wrong with these things when you're out in the field. This is a lot quieter. It uses a battery, so chances are they're going to be a lot more usable, user-friendly inside of a building where you don't want exhaust fumes, you don't want the excessive noise of a gas-powered, and you want reliability of just slap a battery in, pull the trigger, and go. So I think from what I've used it so far, it's a pretty good piece of equipment. Looking at the details, which we'll go over, some of the intricacies of how they built this, the features that they've added, it looks like they did a pretty good job. So starting out, it's a lot lighter and a lot smaller than a typical gas saw. It's just a 9-inch blade, which gives us approximately about a 3 1/4 inch cut, depth of cut, with a brand new abrasive blade and with the diamond blade that it also comes with. The kit I got has the abrasive and one diamond blade, and came with a charger, and this particular one came with a 9 amp hour Flex Volt battery. You can get the 6 amp hour, but with something like this, you probably want to get the biggest capacity that you can stuff in there. So, like most, this is going to be more compliant with the new silica standards. So it does have an integrated water feature, which actually has a garden hose thread quick connect that actually mounts to the saw itself. Pretty easy, it's just a push connect. It's got an actual shut-off valve here that turns the saw water on and off, and it's internally routed, so there are no hoses, tubes, anything like that on the exterior of the saw until you get right up to the blade guard here, which it actually has tubing run through, and then it has distribution points at a couple different points on the sides of the blade, and I believe, I'm not sure if there's one at the top. I don't think there's one up here at the top. The blade guard, like a lot of saws, it's actually adjustable. It's got a little latch on the side so you can do more plunge cut straight in, and if you want to do more of a downward cut, you can adjust it that way. If the saw does decide to buck up on you, you can adjust that blade guard and protect yourself a little bit more. It's a belt drive, so there's an actual belt that comes through here and engages the cutting head, and then there's a spindle lock here, so you can lock that. So it has a clutch in it, so if you listen to, as I manually spin the blade, it kind of disengages there, so that's kind of a safety feature to help reduce bind up. On the actual tool itself, it's got a lock for the trigger that you have to pull and disengage to get the trigger to pull, so you don't just inadvertently pick it up and start the tool, which is one of the issues with a cordless tool, is that they're basically always on. It's not like a gas tool where if it's not running, you know it's safe. So as far as the battery compartment, there's a latch on the back here. You open it up. There's not a whole lot to the tool. There's a huge battery compartment in here. I mean, you can put your whole hand in there. And for this, you just basically take the battery, drop it straight down, close the lid, and latch it. The enclosure has a rubber gasket molded in all the way around the perimeter to help seal the battery compartment, because you are going to be working either in a dusty environment, metal shavings, or a wet environment. So if you're dry cutting masonry, which you shouldn't be doing nowadays, you won't get dust in there. Or if you're cutting metal, you aren't going to be getting a lot of metal shavings and particles in here, which can happen. And then if you're wet cutting, whether you're doing a wall demo, cutting into a brick wall, or cutting a thin concrete slab or pavers or something like that, that'll keep your battery compartment clean. They do actually provide a storage compartment, a little slot inside for your actual blade wrench, which is nice. That way you don't lose it. You don't have to zip tie or tie wire it onto your handle and have it get lost somewhere. So overall, it's a pretty nice tool. I really like it. We'll take it out and we'll cut some pavers and some rebar, which I have on site. And it's got a real good blade break in it, so it stops spinning pretty quick. So we'll get after it and we'll make some cuts, and I'll do kind of a final review on my opinions of it. Alright, so we got to see some cuts made with this saw. I cut through a piece of number 3 rebar, a piece of 3/4 inch steel form stake because I didn't have any larger rebar sitting around in my backyard, and then I also grabbed a chunk of 3/4 inch copper water line just to kind of see what it would do in copper, not just steel. So it seemed to buzz through all three just fine. So whether you're working with reinforcing rebar, I would assume angle iron, L metal, stuff like that, it would do just fine. As far as sheet metal, obviously it'll cut through it, but every time I've ever used an abrasive disc with sheet metal, it destroys the discs really, really fast, because you're always, as soon as you make that plunge cut, you're cutting against a knife edge that's basically tearing up the edge of this blade. So I don't know if I'd use it for that kind of demo too much. And then we went to a brick paver, and again, you know, with the diamond wheel, it seemed to go through it pretty well. As far as the overall saw, it's one of the spendier cordless tools you're going to hit out there. When they first came out, they were well over $800, and I'm sure somebody out there is still charging that much. But right now, a combo with the saw, 2 9-amp hour batteries, the diamond blade and the abrasive blade, one of each, and a charger, that runs about $700. As far as the abrasive blade, they're going, I've seen them from about $10 a piece up to about $16 a piece, so they're a little spendy on the abrasive blades. For the diamond blade, I really like the diamond blade. It seems to have a really aggressive tooth pattern and diamond embedment, and it also has some little segments to help get the slurry out of the cut. They're running about 60 bucks, which for a 9-inch diameter diamond blade, that's actually a really good deal. So overall, it's a pretty good piece of equipment. Again, it's very versatile. You can use it in environments where you couldn't normally use a gas saw. The one drawback that I do see with this is that with the quick connect coupling, even though it is nice in that the hose can be plugged into this, or this can be screwed onto the end of your garden hose and charged or have water turned on, it doesn't spray water out. It's only when you connect it to the saw that it actually opens this up. The one drawback though that I see is that it's got a really funky kind of almost like an air hose fitting on the saw itself, which is metal, which is nice. It's got an O-ring on it, which could get torn up if you leave this not connected to it. And then this is all plastic, so I could see somebody having the hose connected to the saw and yanking the hose and breaking this off. It's going to happen, I guarantee you. Somebody somewhere has already done it. So the fact that it's plastic and it's a unique fitting might make replacement kind of challenging. On my job site, one of our subcontractors is using these to do some repair work, patching, cutting, stuff like that of concrete where conduit was coming up that had to be abandoned. They actually took a formwork tank sprayer or weed sprayer, some people might use. They found fittings to adapt from the end of that hose and the valve to this particular garden hose thread. And that way they had an all-in-one, pump up the weed sprayer and pressurize it and get water to the saw without having to have a hose going back to a hydrant or a water buffalo or a wall faucet. So that was kind of a neat feature, which in turn would allow you to get into a building without having to run hoses, garden hoses through. So as far as doing light demolition work, plumbers cutting slabs for a new toilet drain or shower drain, something like that, it'd be really nice. As far as demolition work, it might work for demolition. Like I said, I cut through that copper water pipe, and as you saw, it cut through pretty quick. I'd assume it'd go through conduit just as well. And then for rebar reinforcing work, things like that, I would assume it'd be pretty good. I've cut bundles of like 4 or 5 pieces of reinforcing bar at a time with this disc already. And if you just take your time, keep the saw straight, you don't twist it while you're in the cut, it'd work fine. Any type of abrasive discs, I'm not a really big fan using them on sheet metal. So if you're trying to cut delta panel or thin sheet metal panels, flashing trims, stuff like that, they tend to destroy these blades really fast, because once you cut through and you start traveling with your saw, you're always cutting up against this knife edge of that sheet metal, which in turn tears up these blades pretty quick. If you've got experience with this, if you know people that do, if you have questions about it, leave a comment. I'll try and get back to you. So have a good one. Until next time, this is Dan. Bye.